Here, a new episode of Chordplay. This is the Chords of Blackfoot, and I've had a lot of requests to feature some of Blackfoot's music, and once again, these guys are essential. They're from Jacksonville, Florida, and formed in 1969, and definitely helped pioneer Southern rock in the early 70s. And actually, lead vocalist guitarist Rickey Medlocke was approached by Skynyrd, and he left Blackfoot in 71, joined forces with Skynyrd, played with them until somewhere around 1972, left Skynyrd, came back to Blackfoot, and then Rickey continued to play with Blackfoot all the way through the 90s. And then somewhere around 1996, he rejoined Lynyrd Skynyrd, and he's been there ever since. But definitely, his former band, Blackfoot, was very influential and pioneering, for a lot of the hard rock and metal that paved the way and came after, Blackfoot's music. It's almost like Molly Hatchet. They were Southern rock bands, but they definitely caught the attention and the ears of all these young hard rock and metal guitarists. And there's just something really cool about their music. Great band, great music, and this is going to be a good episode. So here we go. So in the guitar department during that classic era of Blackfoot's music, you had Rickey Medlocke, who was also the lead vocalist, and you also had Charlie Hargrett. And Charlie and Rickey worked well together. They were a dynamic duo of Southern rock guitar. And I noticed while working on the material for this lesson, they commonly split their parts up. One guitarist would play higher, the other one would play lower, or they'd kind of split riffs, and part of one riff one guitarist would play, and the rest of the riff the other one would play. And they were constantly doing this tag team of guitar, which is really cool. And I think Charlie left the band somewhere in 1984, but there's something about this chemistry. You can hear that chemistry between Rickey and Charlie. Really cool stuff going on in their music, for sure. And while I was going through photos and putting the material for this lesson together, I couldn't help but notice that Charlie looks a lot like Murray from Stranger Things. Of course, I've been binging Stranger Things, and then when I saw photos of Charlie, I was like, hey, it's Murray. The music in this episode came from 3 different Blackfoot albums, and while there are other albums I didn't pull music from, I did try to serve up an assortment, even though I did get locked onto the Strikes album. Strikes is definitely Blackfoot's, strongest or most popular album. Train's on there and a bunch of other songs. And, their other albums are great too. There's great music to be found everywhere. Actually, no Reservations I wasn't familiar with until I put this episode together. There's some great stuff on that first Blackfoot album. Anyway, just a heads up, there is a lot of Strikes in this episode, but I did kind of deviate from that album just a little bit. With the opening That's Not Another Maker from the No Reservations album, it's a really cool riff like this. Right there, you're starting with this really cool single note riff, and you're sliding this B into C sharp and grabbing that F sharp, and then it moves to E. So you start with that B to C sharp to F sharp, then the low E open, E to D with a little bit of vibrato, back to that E, and then you're doing this kind of sidestepping. So that B to D, B to E, B to D, B to G. Pretty cool, interesting second riff right there. So you're gonna do that E to D to E again, and then this B to D, B to E, and then you start it again. And then start it again. Then you hear power chords there. I think it's actually the second guitar. So right there you're just doing that E to D. And then eventually you hear this. Fourths right there, that partial A to partial B, partial D to partial E, and then an E power chord, and then an E minor chord, and then do those fourths again. The second time you want to end on that partial D and then play D major. The third time you're going to grab that partial C sharp, slide that up to a partial D to a partial B, and then you're going to grab this partial A to partial B, that A to B, and then A to that open D and G string for a partial G, back to that A. So that part right there. This really cool A to G sharp. It's like A to G sharp back and forth, that zigzag, and then a D power chord, and then you start that whole riff again. Start on that E power chord, D major, and the last time right there you just end on that A power chord and it moves right in the verse. But check that song out, it's really cool. Next up is the song Baby Blue from the Strikes album. It's this crushing power chord riff like this. So it's pretty simple, but it starts with this, you know, E power chord. The low E open, E5, low E open to a C sharp 5, low E open to a D5, slide that D5 to C sharp, and then C sharp to D, D to E, like that. Like that. And right there you're going to do the same riff, and then this little D to C sharp to A. So that D to C sharp to the open A, and then a G to low E open, and then end with that E note right there on the second fret on the D. And you'll notice Blackfoot has all these really sneaky single note riffs like that, which is deceptive. It's really simple, but it's kind of, you know, elusive. The last time just hit that E power chord to C sharp power chord to an A power chord. Rock out song for sure. Speaking of elusive single note riffs, the song Train Train has one. This is arguably Blackfoot's most popular song, but Train Train's like this. So we're basically bouncing off this E power chord and grabbing that G note right there. So you're bouncing off the low E, and then you're grabbing the top part of that E5. And the low E open a couple times, and then a G power chord to an F sharp power chord. And then here's the elusive riff. Low E the open G to G sharp, the open D, and then C sharp to B, and then you're going to grab this G note right there, and you're kind of moving like to an E power chord, and then an A power chord accented, like that. And the way it just kind of flows in there is kind of elusive, but that's the riff. Next up is the song Searching. This is from the album Marauder, and we're in drop D tuning. This is also using a clean channel, and I'm also playing fingerstyle, but Searching's like this. Starts with this D5, and then you're also going to finger pick through a D sus4 right here, and then right there you're going to grab that D note with the open A, and then this B flat. So that's kind of like a I guess you could think of it like a B major 6 right there, because you're grabbing, you know, B flat, the open D, the open G, and then that fretted D note. It's like a B flat major 6 right there. There, grab a C, and then you're going to grab the open D, E to F, you know, single notes right there, and then you're walking right back into that D5, like that. And then the second time right here, go back to that C note. Drop D is going to come in, because you're going to grab that C to the open A, and then you're going to grab this F note to that open D, because we're in drop D, like that. So it's a really cool guitar part. Next up is Road Fever, the opening track from Strikes, and this song kicks ass like this. Something like that. So it starts with this hyperactive, you know, finger plucked idea like this. So right there it's a D5 into an E5. And I'm just plucking, I'm still holding the pick with my index and thumb, but I'm plucking with my middle and third finger right there. So that D to E, go back to that D, and then you're going to lose the D note and pick up that C sharp, and it's a partial A right there. Like that, and it's very hyperactive. And then you hear this. So the open A, that B flat to B to the open D, and then this D, I'm sorry, this E to the open D to that B note on the A string, like that. And then you're going to grab this. So that's going to look like an A7 sus4 right there, but actually the root note is G. You hear the bass, you know, it's playing that G root note. So that's actually a G6-9 right there, like that. Kind of a jazz chord, but hiding right in the middle of this southern rock riff. So you've got this. And then you hear the super heavy, you know, lower power chord riff. It kind of reminds me of Balls to the Wall by Accept, but keep in mind this is Blackfoot, so this is before Accept. And you've got... So that open, you know, A and D is a functioning as a D power chord. And then that, you know, second fret bar, there's your E. And then you're reaching up here and grabbing this partial G. And then move over to that A power chord right there. He's also kind of bouncing off the low E occasionally. Cool riff, and definitely, you know, pioneering with those heavy kind of power chord riffs too. Really cool. Last but not least is Highway Song from the Strikes album, and this is a classic like this. We've got an E minor 7 and we're just picking through these chords like that. You grab this B to C and then the open G, open D, and then slide that C to D and do the open G and D again like that. And the second time go to C. Kind of weird, so it's C major, grab the sus2, that D note with the open G, then you're going to grab this B note with that C still there on the first fret on the B string, and then it's a D over F sharp. So D over F sharp with the high E open, that sus2, hammer on that open A to the B, to the open D. So right there, there's a lot going on right there, of course. So after that C move and the D over F sharp, this part, right there you're going to go back to E minor 7, like that. So you've got the C, the D over F sharp, E minor 7, and then right here, basically moving to a B11 right there. Think of a B7, but play the high E open, and that's your 11. That's basically what we're returning to after that E minor, or E minor 7. And then you loop the whole thing over again. That's going to wrap this episode of Chordplay with the Chords of Blackfoot, and really made me happy when I saw the requests pour in for Blackfoot, which those started to pop up, you know, shortly after I started adding some southern rock bands to the mix here. You know, the Allman Brothers and Skynyrd and Molly Hatchet, and I noticed Blackfoot, you know, just popping up everywhere in the comments section, which is awesome. And it's really cool to go back and listen to some of these early groups that kind of pioneered or paved the way or opened doors, you know, for other bands. Because when I hear Molly Hatchet and Blackfoot and some of this music, I can't help but notice, you know, what happened the decade following the 70s. All those 80s, you know, power chord riffs and rock, you know, riffs and stuff that popped up. A lot of it you can trace back, of course, to groups like Black Sabbath. But you can also trace it back to groups like Molly Hatchet and, of course, Blackfoot here, too. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content material. Thank you.